January 5th, a national election will determine the outcome of the U.S. Senate. So this is key. These two races, Loeffler and Perdue, and getting Georgia conservative voters excited again about this. The president will be there the night before. Ivanka Trump was there yesterday, but so was Kamala Harris. So both sides, again, are putting in all the resources they've got left, all the resources they can put together.
I think former Vice President Biden is going to be coming down there, too.
Yeah, that's right. So, this is a national election. Now, the Secretary of State, Raffensberger, has put in a couple of new policies. One, he is allowing a outside University of Georgia, to do a sampling from the entire state of the absentee ballot signatures to make sure they are matching. And this is key because allowing just election officials who aren't trained in signature experts to do it, when they seem like there's so many more mail-in ballots they've ever dealt with before, they're going to allow real signature experts, forensics experts from the University of Georgia, a nonpartisan way to look at those ballots. That was win number one. Win number two came out today when the Georgia Secretary of State, I think he may have issued the statement last night. No, he issued the statement today. Is that they've already identified and they've sent letters to 8,000 out-of-state voters who have requested absentee ballots in Georgia. Some of them may be lawfully eligible to vote. They may be military. They may be people temporarily out of town, or temporary work. There are some exceptions. This is quite a large number this early, and he wants to make clear here that if you are someone who is doing this illegally, that means you are not a citizen of Georgia and not eligible to vote absentee in the Georgia election runoff on January 5th. The state is ready to prosecute to the fullest extent of the law any of those individuals, and the penalties include, I just want this to be a wake-up call. Don't get abused, even if you're on the left. Don't take this risk. You're risking a fine of up to $100,000, a felony on your record definitely, and up to 10 years in prison because you tried to vote in a state you're not a citizen of. That's how serious we take our elections in Georgia. So the problem here with me is that looking back, if they would have been doing this during the general election, who would have won Georgia? I say that because Joe Biden only carried it by 12,000 votes. And this is the absentee ballots that have come in so far. There's usually just a deluge, up until
because the same
cutoff.
ones could have applied for a mail-in ballot too.
Right.
If it wasn't going to their house. I have no idea.
Or
Andy
where they
Economou, our senior counsel at the ACLJ, is actually in Atlanta right now. And Andy, this new move by the Secretary of State, at least as to these 8,000 ballots, is at least bringing some sense of more control and more scrutiny of these ballots to make sure that these are legal ballots being cast.
Yes, and it's a move that is long overdue, Jay. It should have been implemented in the general election. I agree with what Jordan said. It could have been changed. It could have changed the election results if we had had independent forensic examiners, as Raffensberger is doing now, from the University of Georgia to check the signature on file in the voter registration with the signature on the ballot, but certainly identifying at least 8,000, and I think it's probably more than that he should have sent out, but at least identifying 8,000 people who have requested absentee ballots, who have changed their post office registration address with the United States Postal Service. That is suspect right there. If you have changed your address with the Postal Service, that you're moved out of state, what are you asking for an absentee ballot for? You're no longer a Georgia citizen. You have moved to another jurisdiction.
And at least, Andy, there are some exemptions. I don't want to cut you off, but there are some exemptions. Military, because they can be stationed at a different base and still keep their Georgia, and people that are on maybe temporary work.
I understand that. Yeah. Military, I have no problem. People who may be teleworking temporarily from another state, but at least he's looking into it, which is something that he should have done before, and I think that's a good step. Somebody has waken up in the Secretary of State's office and is looking at these things which should have been looked at before. But this, I can tell you, this is a big election. I voted in person. I have never seen that many people vote in a runoff election as voted in the Decatur, Georgia precinct where I went to vote early vote. It is a mob of people.
Nearly 1.5 million Georgia voters have already cast their ballots in the Senate runoff elections for next month. Will be on January 5th. So there's already been a big result. Now, I'm going to go to Harry Hutchinson because from a legal standpoint, I think what the Secretary of State's doing, and we have a question coming in on Facebook on this. Pauline said, why is the Secretary of State of Georgia, why did he do the same thing for the presidential election? They should have.
Absolutely. And one of the things that distinguishes the Georgia Secretary of State, Brad Raffensberger, is that he seems to be behind the eight ball. In other words, he is now saying that he is going to enforce the law. Where was he before November the 3rd? Where was he during the general election? And the best deterrence to violating the Georgia law with respect to the runoff would indeed be the prosecution and conviction of individuals who have already violated the law with respect to the November 3rd general election. So I welcome what he's doing now, but I think the real issue is where was he for the last 6 to 9 months?
Yep.
I think he was missing in action.
Van, I have noticed that every time a Republican member of the U.S. Senate is interviewed on anything, it could be the stimulus package, that they immediately come back to, and that's why we have to have 2 Georgia senators voted Republican, or else none of this happens. I mean, this is – I'm sure you're hearing it up there across the street. What's the sense of this?
Well, it's the most important thing moving in their world right now. I mean, they approved the stimulus package last night, which is, of course, very important. But they know that their job for at least the next 2 years, and obviously these Georgia Senate cycles, it's a 6-year cycle for a Senate term. But the next Congress, the leadership of the Senate is going to depend on these 2 races, whether it's going to be Leader Schumer or Leader McConnell. And look, I agree that these are good moves by the Secretary of State. I do hope, Jay, that there's a couple more layers to this, though. I mean, we talked on yesterday's broadcast how there are nearly 40,000 people who have already voted that didn't vote in November. And much like the 8,000 people we're talking about, Jay, a lot of those are going to be valid, but some of them probably won't be. Yeah. So that's a tier that the Secretary of State has got to look at. And look, it's not accusing folks of wrongdoing. Yeah. It's literally his job to look at these suspect votes and say which ones are valid and which ones aren't.